for Troy Community Land Bank. It is November 11th at 8:30 a.m. Call to order with a roll call. Suzanne Spellin,
Here.
Brian Barker here, Monica Kuzieski,
Here.
James Mager here. Also in attendance is board member Andrew Cooper, executive director Brad Lewis, and project manager Paul Donnelly. Review the minutes? No, we don't have minutes, right? Okay. We'll talk about brief RFP.
Dan?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so our solicitation for RFPs for three of the properties that we have, 32 Glen, 785 River, and 17 Park. The submission period has ended. Executive Director Lewis and I have gone through the bids, which we have copies of every single bid that has come through. If you'll take a look, here are the results and spreadsheet based down from each address.
Those three of them, so
Okay, so it came in under bid. One was over
we'll
bid.
pass it around.
Over budget.
Sure, if everybody just take a quick look.
One was over budget, one was under budget, right?
No,
That particular address, there's three total
Yeah,
projects,
they're under budget on all,
Okay.
on all.
which I think is an interesting thing, because it's like being under budget is a good thing for the state, but at the same time, the state would have paid whatever the amount was, so.
Morning.
And here's Matt here.
Hi, how are you?
We started our meeting.
Street and, a little further away than anybody.
You just said exactly that. So I think the goal of this is just to have a discussion and just for the executive committee, just to
Mhm.
make the recommendation on to
The board. Mhm.
Just if there's any concerns or issues, I mean, you follow procurement, so
Mhm.
as far as I'm concerned, as treasurer, that, and it's under budget, which is great, because I'm not open to it. So let's talk about that for a second,
Yeah.
because this is awarded with funding that expires on 12/1.
Technically, yes.
So you are gonna apply for
An
a little bit of an extension?
Yeah,
Okay,
and so all along from the LBI2 money, Crystal is the lady that administrates it from HCR. She has been all but saying, we're gonna give you an extension. There's no point in awarding you more money because we want to use this money. But she won't say she's gonna give me an extension. She just says, you'll apply for it as we get closer and you have the projects available. So she's giving me all the confidence to believe that even delaying the debris in 785 River Street, as long as we're in the works and done environmental, that she's gonna allow us to do all 9 projects through. What I don't know, since it's a $1.7 million grant, we budgeted maybe 300,000 in expenditures for it, if she's going to extend the 1.4 million. Which I'm assuming she will, because they have 110 total and they've only spent 12 million for all. So they have about $98 million earmarked for land banks. So I can't see, she doesn't want to go through the process of awarding this new money and canceling out old money because she feels like it's just red tape. That's what she made me feel. But I don't think she's gonna put pen to paper and send us an email saying, yeah, you're good.
so, once after tomorrow's meeting and we do the roofing and then we talk about the summer tomorrow.
Mhm.
My recommendation would be to email her and just say, we've authorized this expenditure.
Mhm.
We know that the deadline is 12/1. We don't feel that it might be done by then, so we'd like to extension.
Yeah. And we've got
I've
design.
asked that question directly, and she pretty much answered it the way Brad put it. You know, she didn't promise, quote unquote, in writing, but again, you'll need to, if you're gonna surpass the date, let us know where you are as the project.
Yeah.
matures.
But I mean, now that we'll have awarded it, hopefully, the work gets to award it,
Right.
and we'll be in a better position to tell her exactly where you're at.
I mean, on the phone last week, she explicitly said, well, if your board chair would just send you an email that said that they're okay with you withdrawing the money ahead of time, that could help us get the money ahead of time too. So
We already authorized this expenditure, didn't we?
right, but pulling the money ahead of having an invoice and having the project complete. So I don't think she's gonna she would literally prepay us before we've,
That's my question.
Before
Did
the
you get,
work is done,
or even
it
have.
would
an invoice.
enable us to pay the vendor. That's
Correct.
Well,
in a
that's-
reasonable manner.
If that's, I mean, if you're gonna have the bids, right?
Mhm.
You could do your job.
sure.
I mean, it,
Send an email.
it's, well, I don't think it's necessary, because tomorrow we'll just have the vendor has already given us invoices, because of course, they're trying to get everything ahead of time, but we have to follow our policies, and so,
So they asked. She
Yeah.
asked for invoices.
Crystal did,
Crystal
yes.
did, yeah.
Crystal asked for invoices, because I asked her what the next step is, she said, give us invoices, so the vendor gives us invoices, but we have to approve him as well, so. So we're,
So after the board meeting tomorrow, we award Silvercrest with this contract.
if that's what you guys feel is the best vendor, I mean, I look at the numbers and it looks like the lowest person, and they've written in the write-up that they understand that the brickwork needs to be included, all chimneys and parapets need to be firmed up so that they can accept the roof.
785 included.
Yeah.
We
So,
have the type of scope to work for the vendor with the lowest bidder. That includes that work.
and so as long as everybody's on board with them, yes, I think they're willing to start even as soon as like this week.
And back to the HCR conversation.
Mhm.
Where are you at with when she releases the money, so we can assure that they get paid in time?
Yeah, so our contract that I had Matt look over, he made some small changes.
Okay.
But not very big, but that's the one that's right there. So
Yep.
that's the resolution that allows us to go into the contract that's there.
Yeah.
It says that we'll pay them 30 days after completion. HCR's disbursement is 10 to 20 days after you ask for it. So if they give me the invoice after it's done and I submit the invoice that day, we should get the money within 10 to 20 days. And I've seen probably about 10 days, 15 days.
So we'll have the money before they're done. Pretty close.
Well, no, they'll be done and they'll have to submit our invoice and we have 30 days to pay them.
Okay.
And HCR will give us the money within 10 to 20 days. So what we would have to do as a board and as an organization is produce the check to them after 30 days, but we have to go through our policy. I mean, we were gonna talk about sort of like how we sign checks here today, because obviously we now have a full board and we have a treasurer, so we should have some policy around, the internal controls of executing checks, but that's a timeline too. So if they give us the invoice, I submit it to HCR, then we also have to do our internal control part of issuing checks.
They wire you funds or they say check?
ACH, so I guess that's a wire.
Check funds that have cleared. the
Right,
other-
yeah. Mhm. Yeah, direct deposit.
Top letter, it's roofs are weather dependent, so
Yeah,
you can get started.
which is, I don't want to call it a special meeting at all, but like, to get a roof on is that extra week could help.
Yes.
Yeah, we gotta get these on the phone.
Yeah, for sure. Just to protect the structures, but additionally, moving forward, when I am writing RFPs, I'm gonna make sure that the award dates coincide with our board dates to avoid special meetings and keep you guys here when you need me here.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. I've served on enough boards, I get.
So keep in mind, so thinking, going backwards, so if your goal is the board meeting is the award, I would do it at least the due date, a week and a half to 2 weeks prior.
Mhm.
So you have time to make sure you
Yeah.
review it, make sure it's
Mhm.
all inclusive, you have time to talk to, communicate with them.
We have to, by law, posting on New York State Contract Reporter, if we're using state funds, which we are, well, it's 14 business days, which effectively becomes 3 weeks. So I need that date to coincide with when proposals are received, the close, and the award. So just to package that into whatever that 40-day, 50-day window is, from the time that we want to do an RFP to the time we actually award.
We nod that head all the time.
Yeah, and obviously we're talking about that strategy right now, and Paul's been working on getting these projects off the board for 4 months, so it's,
It's great to move, but I think it's just part of that, that's part of the cleanup, is just,
Sure.
looking backwards.
And there wasn't really here a precedent that Brad nor I could find, as far as awarding RFPs over the $10,000 threshold to which we need board approval. So,
Opinion of-
Yeah, in the opinion of the board. That's what our procurement policy
yes.
says.
Over 10,000.
I'm gonna ask Matt a question about what we were talking. Matt, RFP process. Does Brad need board approval to send?
We typically need board approval to send out. I think every organization bylaws are different. So I have not seen your bylaws yet. My expectation would be that there'd be a dollar threshold. So.
So there's the three in the procurement policy, there's the 0 to 3,000,
And it's, I brought the blue book out
3,000
there.
to 999.
Yeah, that's
It's, right, so it's how many quotes are needed, like 2 per little, right, whatever that is. If it's over $10,000, it's the opinion of the board, so then you would also follow like a bidding process, like you would do like anything over 10. I would probably recommend in this day and age, $2,000 is not a big threshold. And where I work, we've actually just recently increased it, just for, weirdly enough, you can't buy a lot for $2,000 anymore, especially doing the work we're doing. So I think you can look at that, and what we do where I work is that procurement guideline also is our check writing guideline, right? Like, as far as like being able to sign for things, right? If you go over where you have to go out and publicly bid to the dollar amount, then that would require a double signature, right? So Brad and the executive director, or the executive director and the board chair or the board treasurer, like it would just require 2 signatures.
And what is that threshold?
In your procurement
Yeah.
policy now, it's,
In ours,
10.
it's 10, right?
It's over
What is
10.
yours over in
We just switched it to 50,
to 50?
but my budget's a little bit bigger than yours, so.
I'm sure.
So the chair and or the treasurer,
It used to be 25.
Gotcha.
the chair and or the treasurer could allow him to start an RFP process?
So, I mean, typically you would, I mean, the way we did it in the past was we had, and Suzanne and Brian, you were there, we always had a plan, right? We always knew what the acquisition and disposition policy was. So if we were acquiring something in our acquisition policy, it actually says what Brad and team needs to do to present this to the committee to recommend to the board.
Now,
Right.
just to clarify, when you say acquisition, you mean properties?
Yes.
Okay, not procurement, which means like services.
But it goes, right, it goes in tail, right? So if all of a sudden you say we're acquiring 123 State Street, right, and 123 State Street in the acquisition guidelines, we present that it needs a new roof, it needs a new foundation, it needs all of these things, and we approve that purchase. And then the subsequent piece, but also the application to whatever funding source we have, there's all of these plans. I think by having that little bit of a strategic plan and us approving it as a body, it opens up your ability to be able to go source. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The more we delineate and approve, the easier it is to operate.
Mhm.
But still being mindful of our procurement guidelines. Once you get over a certain threshold, we definitely want to come back to the board for.
Which brings me to a case study of like, there was I want to call it a comment during one board meeting that said, we need to issue a snow RFP, which I think everybody knows we need to have a snow clearing vendor for our sidewalks. So I issued that one. Now, I have 2 responses, and one is lower by a good 10-20% than the other one. And I don't think any of it's going to go over our $10,000 disbursement policy. So I assumed that we were going to go with the lowest person. But we didn't get board approval to push the RFP out.
I mean, something like that, maybe that's just more of a ministerial act. You come back to the board and, whatever.
We'll
That's
let them-
Something like that is what I want, really want. Little day-to-day operation stuff. Does he have to keep calling? Do we have to have special meetings for?
Well, if I do my job right, we don't have any special meetings. If I can strategize the timeline, we would be able to.
Understood.
Yeah.
We still have a little bit of a hurdle here
Yeah.
to get over the hump and get this thing on. So I'm saying in that time period, we gotta figure out what he can do on his own.
So also keep in mind that that it is a total of 10,000 or more,
Mhm.
right? So if somebody awards a bid that says they're gonna charge you $500 per property per snowstorm. If, you have to make the assumption with the number of properties we have, and we live in New York State, that it most likely is gonna be over a $10,000 expenditure.
I think
Right.
if I remember correctly, it's professional services and construction and that sort of work has a different policy in our book.
So I would also defer to the attorney. There is always, and we have this in the city, there is a weird factor between whether snow removal, lawn care, and something else is actually considered a professional service.
There's two schools of thought, and every agency that I've ever worked for, we've had internal services for that, so we've never had to address the issue. I would suggest that you want to err on the side of treating it that way, so that you have what you're talking about can also be dealt with administratively, as long as you're staying under the dollar threshold and you're reporting to the board. The ability to take action should you get to that point where you are reaching the threshold. So, for instance, you were talking about snow removal. On an RFP, you've got your lowest bidder right now. You're not looking to the $10,000 threshold, but you have the potential to get there. If in fact you're tracking your budget and you're looking like you might get to a point where you exceed, then you can do another resolution by the board to authorize you to exceed the dollar threshold
Mhm.
to continue with that same event
Mhm.
to go off. Fee, which you would have to. So there's a couple of different ways to skin the cat and see your bylaws.
Yeah. And that's per year, right? So, with 2 months to go, probably anybody's clearing snow is not gonna be 10,000. For us, with the numbers being $50 or $70, $80 per property. So, okay.
Okay. So, anything else? Right.
But again, going back to our
Yeah.
procurement policy, that for the first two pieces, you can authorize the contract.
Mhm.
And then over 10 says, in the opinion of the board.
Mhm.
So if you feel that you have something that will fall under that 9,999 threshold, you have the authority to
Mhm.
approve.
But I would recommend that you bring it with an email to the board.
Yeah.
X or
Yeah.
my intention to do X.
Mhm.
And particularly in the day and age of email, anybody that has a question or a concern doesn't like the way that it just reads. I really think that maybe we should have a board discussion. We should have this separated.
Mhm.
That way you're not, behind closed doors, spending 9,000. Not necessarily love the look of it.
Right.
Whatever the question is. So just, it's good record keeping and one that's also great for.
Right.
It's not a permission thing, it's
No,
just.
it's just,
It's
letting
next.
you know.
Right. And can you,
So you can act, you have the freedom to act.
right, I'm just reading the act, but I've been pulled in two different directions. Initially, when I was hired, I was asked to report everything I'm doing daily to the board. And then I've been, I guess you say the word criticized by communicating to the board outside of a meeting. And, can you speak to like what the rules are, of what information I'm allowed to give the board outside of a meeting?
You're permitted, I mean, there's no prohibition to your board being issued. There's prohibitions to having meetings that are not noticed to the public and consumption, essentially. But routinely, as many boards that that we get and distribute information so that you are having an educated discussion when you come to that meeting.
Mhm.
If you're being forced to digest a budget when you sit down at the meeting, being forced to digest a contract project for one of your properties, you're not going to make an informed decision. So the law does give you in distributing information. That information has to be available to the public
Mhm.
should they ask for it. But you can distribute and communicate with you. Not like you can't talk to each other, outside of the meeting. That's not the purpose for it.
That's also more in trying to gauge a temperature, right? But that is something that you don't want to do. You don't want to necessarily steer a decision. You want to have open communication in the open meeting itself.
Sure.
I agree with Matt, you literally are gonna give the information to the board, maybe even produce some things to think about as you're reviewing the documents, or, give a little bit of commentary on the roof, right? Like we did a bid process, we have to do best value or best, literally do a little bit of a summary of what they're gonna read and how you came up with this recommendation. And then that gives them the background to be able to review openly the document. One of the other things I started doing with my board is actually just, in between each meeting, maybe once, I will do what I'm working on, what's across my desk right now, right? Like, what are we in the process of doing? Just so they feel like they're included before, my board meetings are a little bit further apart, but you could certainly do that in the full transparency with the board and just say, hey, just let you know what we're working on, what our status is, until we get to the next meeting.
But don't go sending, and this probably goes without saying, I would not go sending anything via email to your board that you don't want public to consume.
Yeah, it's full. That helps.
You'd
Anything
be
else?
amazed at things I've seen sent.
Yeah.
Anything else on roofs?
I think you're complete.
Yeah,
I think you should.
I mean, we're just making a recommendation to. Moving on to the attorney RFP.
I think that was the whole reason for this.
For
Why
this,
don't you give a synopsis of what?
So as everyone is aware, the previous council, Kate, has resigned. So in the interim, we need someone to represent us moving forward to help Brad execute contracts and to keep us in lane. So Brad has pulled this RFP this came from other land banks?
Yeah.
Correct? Okay, what a standard RFP that other land banks are using, which I will be making a motion tomorrow and suggestion to the board to allow Brad to put this RFP out so that we can get someone, I'm hoping January 1 next year. Does that sound, Suzanne and Brian, does that sound fair? January 1 to at least retain someone permanently
Yeah,
for 2 years?
Yes.
Yes, not for 2 years. We'd like to do this every 2 years.
I'm just worried about the interim.
Well,
Why don't you explain what's going on?
Yeah.
Okay, so based on our procurement policy, any professional services, up to $10,000, I can procure that. And I brought in Matt to do that for the next 2 months, to help us with resolutions and contracts and that sort of stuff. At the rate of $250 an hour.
And there's also an emergency.
There is, yeah. But based on our budget from, what I put out last month, 2 months shouldn't hit $10,000, I don't think. Yeah.
Yeah. I cut my rate from 450 to 250 for this purpose, and I don't expect that. Even just going through the contract you sent me today, for this purpose, you're talking about less than an hour's worth of work. So it's not, this is not something that
and just to be clear, Matt, the reason Matt did not help with the RFP is because he is also intends on responding to the RFP. So,
Yeah. And it was pretty easy. If you just Google legal services RFP, land bank, New York, you'll see most of the ones that are land banks are using the same template. So, and the interesting thing about this, the interesting thing about this particular template is it assigns point values to experiences. The top 3% of the people that responded get 30 points, the bottom third get no points or something like that. And of course, we can adjust it. And on first glance, I did get feedback that it doesn't explicitly say that people should be in attendance for board meetings. But, we can always add that in for tomorrow. The motion is on the floor to add in that they expect attendance on at least our regular Wednesday meetings. And going forward, I think we should probably have regular standing meetings. Like, so that way people are checking their schedules, they can actually make the land bank a priority versus board members and, our attorney at that point.
In other boards that you've either sat on or represented, does council meet with ED and chairperson?
Not typically meet monthly for just a regular check-in,
Yep.
but certainly whenever there's an issue, yes, and communicate phone, email. The other thing Brett has mentioned, the regular standing is far easier on you as a board from a meeting law compliance perspective, so it's something you should definitely consider. Making it easy to comply with notice requirements, but two, making sure that you have the appropriate attendance and that you're getting for participation. And virtual attendance is permitted. You can do that if you need to, whether people remember or council or professional services. So, you can do it that way. You just have to make sure that in your minutes, you're making it clear that you've got X, Y, and Z attendee by Zoom or whatever.
There's one thing in the land bank law that explicitly says that people virtually attending can't vote.
That was my next one.
So you just have to, if you have an important vote coming up, like the budget or the audit or something like that, you need to make sure that you have at least your forum involved.
And based on our current structure, 11 members, we currently have 9 as of last Thursday. How many of those 11 do we need to actually pass?
That's what Brad and I talked before. It's the majority of the 11, not the majority, not for your higher end procurement. So you need that full 6.
That's the 6 positive votes, right?
Correct.
So if you have 6 in attendance, it has to be unanimous.
Do you think while we have him in the interim, we draft something to send to city council? To have him,
I think city council might be working on it, or at least in the back of their mind. I think they're working on the budget first.
yeah. Carmelo, I don't know Lansingburg's person. I focus on Carmelo just because he was part of your board and, he's easier to reach. He almost.
And that's okay.
Right,
I think it's, we go back to, one of the things I will say after reading the bylaws, and the enabling legislation, it does say, and I would have the attorney opine on this. It does say the initial board. It very specifically says the initial board.
So 11 is
And
11.
that was the enabling legislation that was forward by the city. And also our bylaws state that too. So it would be something, I don't know if there's some nuance in the initial versus not initial.
The function of.
Correct. So, but the initial board shall be 11 members comprised of blah, 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 right? That was the original wording of the enabling legislation. So I don't know if that means subsequent boards down the road can be just adopted and changed by a change of our bylaws, like an internal bylaw versus having to go to the council, because that's what that's what the attorney's for.
Gotcha. So you understand, our goal is to drop from 11 to 9 if those other 2 board seats aren't going to be filled. And they're from school districts, and the land banks across the state have said that the school districts appointed onto a board has not been used at all. And we're the only land bank that has that sort of appointment. And one school district, Lansingburg, has been hard to get an appointment from, and Troy has had appointments in the past, but I guess maybe they're not bought in.
So the goal would be to amend the bylaw. Use the seats.
So it's easier to make majority.
And it's very specific to just those are delineated in the current bylaws, so you're just striking those.
Just a school district.
And I'll give you a blue binder. We have a few of them here. I'll give you one to take with you.
Yeah, I need it.
Yeah, it is right there for you.
Correct.
Mhm.
I don't think there'll be a problem. There's a number of different ways that those amendments can be made, so I need to look and make sure that we follow.
It at least allows us to operate
Yeah.
better if we have the right board makeup.
And honestly, as the person who drafted that initial set, the whole goal was the land banks have that ability to do 50% of the taxes for 5 years. But you have to get every level of, you gotta get the county, you gotta get the city, and you gotta get the property tax or the school districts on board so that we can have that full exemption to the property versus one of three or two of three or whatever it is. So the goal was to be able to have the school districts involved in that process so that they were completely aware, because what we also find in economic development in general is that, like with pilots and with all of those things, is making sure that the school district's involved. That's why you usually see a school district member on the IDA boards, you know what I mean? So that they're abreast of it and can go back and report back to their school board what, this project or those kinds of things mean, and what it means for the neighborhood. So that was the original intention. But if that's not something that we're seeing successful across the state, which I don't believe that's true, then there's.
I think there are just essentially two sets of minutes from. Special meeting. But we are on record. Discuss taking out the school districts. That's already.
That's already-
Something we talked about it.
Okay. Is there anything would it be wise, is there anything else the other board members want to hear from Ed? You wanted to have him give us a brief bio, you don't know who we hired?
That would be nice.
Yeah, so that would be. Yeah. My name's Matt Philbin. I've been practicing since 2003. It started with a firm that represented municipalities across the state in many different ways, notably these types of organizations and the ancillary land use and planning boards, and with regard to the property tax challenges. Moved into life as a prosecutor for a number of years and then went back in 2012 and have been doing land use and planning municipal work since 2012, in addition to the other mid-sized firm based out of Fulton Park, Sarasota. I know show. So
Which one?
I know show.
I know.
We handle, I individually have represented the town of Boston, part-time. So done municipal representation. Now representing landowners seeking to find ways to redevelop that. Visually, golf courses, park citizens, senior community center, and so looking to provide service. That's sort of me in a nutshell. Very, 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 if there are specific questions,
The introduction.
Sure, I'm Monica Kuzieski. Land bank in Detroit. When I worked under Mayor Lou, state decided to start with 9. The mortgage crisis settlement money to enable the body, and then have now come back several years later to sit on the board, hopefully help Brad restructure something that became a little bit skew. And, now
Paul Donnelly and the project manager. Bank. Also.
Brad Lewis, the executive director. We've met her.
Andrew Cooper, president for about 15 years. I've been on the board. Not on the executive committee, but just not working today. Brian Walker, since found, architect, so acting secretary.
I'm Suzanne Spellin. I'm lived in Troy since. And I'm on a bunch of other city boards too. And I was the acting director when the acting chair when the chair. And I'm happily back at the vice chair position.
And Suzanne's the original.
Year after the original. I came on a year
Did
after
you?
you started.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jamie Mager, and
Board chair.
board chair, sorry.
And chair of the A&D.
And chair, that went down, which we have to have.
So, thank you for being here. I think the biggest question I have is making sure that there is, the municipal law helps because you get super acclimated to the world of municipal government and all people. Right, IDAs, LACs, CRCs, and I think that that's knowing that information. The biggest thing we have to report to is obviously the meetings law, public, so making sure that we hold true to those guidelines, because it's not only just the Land Bank Act, then there's like these like refer to this, refer to this, refer to this. It's really one of the only authority entities that also grapples with things in it as well too. I think they were like trying to make it super transparent and super accountable, because it was done with like non-traditional funding. This is Monica's opinion. And then they went and said, oh, we need to make it super transparent. So we're gonna make it a public authority, and the ADO has, structure and guidance. And then we need to make sure that does this. So I think it was just the state's way to make sure that it was super accountable, super auditable, right? And just, it's out there, so.
And complicated.
And complicated, right? Nothing's easy. So one question I do have, that I'd like to make sure, and I think it would be good, and I actually work for the Albany Convention Center. So one thing we do is our board and who they're appointed by, we don't have terms in ours, but ours do have terms. I think it would probably be good to go back and delineate, go back to the bylaws and say who was appointed by the mayor, when were they appointed, right? And then there's also these other qualifications, and as soon as you said architect, it reminded me, there are some things that people have to have some focus in, and I would make sure we dial back, almost like when they were, when they were appointed, what their skill set and who was the appointing body. I think that would be really helpful.
It would be very helpful.
If you go to our website, go to the About Us, I've at least done the work of who they were appointed by.
Yep.
So it says city council appointee, but it obviously didn't say when their term expires, because they would need to be reappointed by those.
Right, so it would be
At
really
those
good to
times.
have those kind of things.
And then where they fall in the spectrum, because one of the things is that they have to have either a business residence in Troy or a permanent residence in Troy. So you have to either live here or you have to have your office here.
Right.
So I think there were a couple of people that were interested in being on the board, but didn't follow those. Maybe they were in Brunswick or something.
But I also think that tie back to whether they're in the housing industry, if
Mm.
they're.
Mm.
There's the architect. Right. There's some of those additional subcategories that.
It's definitely important that you get a chart set up for when people are rolling off.
Yeah.
Make sure that they're being appointed or new individual appointed, communicating in advance with whatever the appointing body is. Because if you're taking action and someone's voting.
Yeah. Of course.
The terms.
To your point about the reports, are you able to assist in Harris report, what's the bond deals?
Right, yeah, I sent the email with the CC on that. And I assume since you do the parish report yourself. Oh, you do,
I used to.
Yeah.
It's really not that
I
difficult,
know.
it's just a lot of culmination. Uh,
I guess my question is, do you know about, if he has a question for these reports?
To a degree, yes. But, you know, from a documentary perspective, yes, but from a data perspective, no, we don't have the
right, I need to get the information. Which should be able to.
I don't think he would have a problem getting information. To make sure this thing's not submitted. That's really.
Yeah. And of course, if I call, I'm sure that they'll want to help me comply.
So one of the things I would recommend, and the board can have this conversation, as far as, I know we just brought on
Keeper.
so there are firms, whether they're legal firms, firms that will actually help do that process.
Mhm.
Just like data, right, and then they'll take it and they'll work with the, it's like almost like a triangle, right? You all work with the auditor. Everybody works with the auditor.
Mhm.
And then there's the management statements, there's the, the financial audit, the audited financials for the year, and it's actually 2 years, but and then once all of that stuff is accepted by the board, then it gets uploaded, and then your budget gets uploaded, and all of these other things can subsequently happen, but I think that that's something to consider in the future, especially if you're gonna maintain part-time status, right? Like making sure that we have somebody to contract for that, like we had in our previous.
Mhm.
And I don't know how the power system works. It was like an authorized representative for
Yep.
us to submit, so. I think for that to
Do you have
change.
a login?
You're also.
She did that last meeting. She got me a login for the authority budget.
You can also they have webinars.
Yes, and I emailed them asking when's the next one. They don't have one scheduled. I think because everybody's probably not doing parish reports right now.
I hate to say it, but they're super friendly about answering questions.
Yeah. I assume that they want us
They
to,
want you to,
they want us to succeed. It seems like the state's been nothing like encouraging and wanting
they want you to.
in every aspect of it. Contacting them honestly.
I used to file them for here.
Mhm.
I did them before. And I know Danae at the city does hers
Mhm.
for the LBC and the IDA. So
Mhm.
it's not like,
Mhm.
it takes time, that's all. And you have to make sure you have all your documents ready to go. And the other piece is like, you have to report all your property, right? Like we have to report all of our holdings.
Mhm.
So, but it's usually not that hard to do. It's just sometimes, and the information's there, so sometimes it's just reading it.
How many properties do you currently hold?
21, I think. I think we're closing on one soon. So maybe 3 or 4 are being closed on now. The attorney that used to represent us is doing some closings. I'm not sure which ones, but and when. I know we're not doing any acquisitions right now.
That's something, obviously not today, but I think he should be brought up abreast of. See if we can figure out what's going on.
Yeah, were you able to send an email out?
I did not get a response, so.
Yeah.
See where we're at.
Yeah, so 7 and 9 Park Avenue are 2 vacant lots that we have. Habitat went to the planning. What's the word that starts with a G? It's not commission, it's
Oh, the board.
board, it starts with a B, planning board. The Habitat is going to the planning board to see if they can get a project moved forward to where they will create 4 independent houses, single family houses, and they're buying the land from us. They own the next lot over. They want to demolish a building. And we had passed a resolution in August of 2023 that allowed the attorney and the chair from then, who's since resigned, to execute and act for the whole board independently of the board to execute a contract with Habitat. They've never, up to what I know, they've never executed a contract, but Habitat is loosely committed to buying that land from us for $7,500. And so it's sort of outstanding. I assume we'll have to do a closing.
I'm curious how they're going through the application process, planning board level.
Contract.
the contract, Signing,
So our attorney asked me to sign something allowing them to act on our behalf between 7 and 9 Park Avenue. No,
There is a signed document that says that there is a potential purchase,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
That we authorize them to continue down whatever
Yeah.
the planning process is.
that was last week I signed that.
typically you would, if someone else to make an application, you'd be signing a certificate.
Right.
But it would be very uncommon for you to sign that in a circumstance where you don't have a contract that's contingent on that. Project. You typically sign a contract for the sale of property, $7,500. That sale is contingent on the subdivision approval by the Detroit Planning Board.
Right,
Do you know what the status is of the
Because otherwise
planning?
you're gonna end up with
right.
Planning board decision.
They got the planning board?
They went 2 weeks, when did they go, 2 weeks ago?
I'm not sure they
Yeah,
did.
we don't even, I don't
Maybe
even know if
Suzanne.
they did. They was on the agenda,
I think because they didn't have the document, they must have been pulled from the
it was when I
agenda.
was,
They didn't have the
Yeah, it
ability
was
to
cool.
act on our behalf until last week. So it,
you did, well.
it,
Goes back
yeah, we haven't
Not sure.
personally, besides the resolution, has been really closely held to the chest of the old attorney. She knows what's happening, not sure.
So you've reached out to Christine.
And she did not respond to me on this. And I asked, I think he's the one that I actually gave the authorization last week to, but I haven't talked to him either. I did sit in a meeting, but not a formal meeting, just, a discussion about housing with Christine one time. But she didn't respond to my emails. And I asked our old attorney about that. She said it's because she has a better relationship with our attorney, so she'll work with her.
Matt, to be perfectly clear, this is something that the board wants to move forward with.
I just don't see you left with a piece of property that's been chopped into 4 pieces.
Correct.
And you know,
I
all of a
think
sudden you've got,
we got a second path for you to execute. So we're not insuring them anymore, we're getting more habitats able to develop into homeowners into. Hey,
Yeah.
So let me try to reach out to Christine.
Mhm.
I'll reach out to Christine
Yeah.
and see if I can.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even the resolution to me seems odd that our attorney and chair that isn't participating in the organization at all, isn't on the board at all. Those are the 2 people. So now at this point, we have a resolution that 2 people that are part of the organization can execute the sale of a contract for the organization.
So, I
did it
mean,
name them by name? or
Yes, yeah.
wasn't The chair.
Right, yeah. So those are the 2 people that the board voted to give complete authorization to execute this contract.
it lists their actual names.
Yes, yep, and it's on our website, in a resolution page and the only one from 2023, so it's pretty easy. I had to upload that, but, the thing about it is it says in the resolution that they need to close in 30 days, and it also said on the resolution, like in the contract that I got, Heather signed, the old chair, but not the counterpart to Habitat. So there's no executed contract, but Heather's signature's been lingering since August of 2023 on this document. Then I think she resigned right after.
We don't know if Habitat has countersigned, we just.
Oh, no, I know they have. It's been my contention the whole time is that our disposition policy is operating in completely different ways, 4 different ways I've seen so far. We've taken applications and had meetings and had the people that want to buy the property come and present to us. We've had applications come in where we've drawn up the contracts, and we've had applications come in that we won't look at unless we get contracts. And then we've had applications that we're moving forward for planning without a contract, so.
It could also so going back to that strategy, right? So, you know, so it specifically says, so you gotta remember disposition comes after.
Yeah,
Right? So in acquisition, it literally, our policy states, when we acquire a property, that before the board votes on it, there is literally an entire like strategy around that property. What
Mhm.
we're gonna invest, what we think we wanna do with it, and, you know, X, Y, Z.
The Park Avenue properties were part of,
Legacy.
the urban design build partnership with RPI.
Right, but that was also supposed to dovetail into Habitat, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
So that was already
Yeah.
approved as we acquired it to go into a habitat structure.
Yeah.
So that, what you're talking about the application, those properties would be exempt because the board's already authorized, like, approved the vision of that to go to habitat. So, you know what I mean, like, yeah,
I guess my recommendation would be, let's get someone on the phone from Habitat.
Mhm.
Get whatever paperwork he deems fit to get this thing in, so we can
Yeah.
legally do this and get it away from. Let's just get it signed, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think with the signature, we also collect the deposit and then the
We'll
deposit.
move forward like a standard contract.
I think so, but I think that it seems like they don't, I mean, I would be projecting on them, but it seems like they, want to see where it lands before planning, before executing the contract. That's what
Yeah,
it, my
but
gut.
so that's the point is now that we're allowing them to dictate, like, it's either we're selling it or we're not.
no, I mean, a traditional contract would have contingency.
Contingency on approval, yes,
Yeah.
but let's make sure we get that in.
Yeah.
We signed in 23.
I mean, we've done a project with Habitat already.
Yeah,
We did the Sixth
We did a
Avenue.
couple of,
Yeah.
Right.
Most things are contingency on planning. I
No, but it's not like it's not an established process, right? So I guess my question to the people who were here before is when you did the ones on River Street and then with the ones on River Street, did we do a contract and then have contingencies in place before they got the approval to do? They did?
It's something that was similar to this.
yeah,
and there is,
Agreed, let them use the land, but I thought at least one was maybe a code. Maybe that's.
yeah, I think the 6 Avenue.
Sixth Ave was code.
You get slab bank signs are all out for.
We gave them, that was with the original attorney general.
Yeah.
Grant to go with them. So they,
Next to Tina, right?
yes. So in addition to, because those were also 3 families, but they switched into 2 families, but with way more work involved in what they were doing there instead of a traditional 2-family. So that was us giving them grant money in addition to working with them as the house, as the owner, right, and selling them the land, but then they also worked with CDBG and got some of the home funding for that.
And then there was another project on 6th, 5th, maybe turned into,
Mhm.
with those stone houses, that was another code.
Go a little bit further up.
Yeah.
Mention it.
Yeah, like 101st,
Oh, I didn't realize it was us.
yeah,
Oh, that was with Joe.
right, right.
Yeah, so, with Habitat, I think everybody wants to move forward with the Park Ave. Just for me, wrapping my head around the strategy, and I think even the land bank law specifically the enabling legislation specifically says that we can only take property that we have a strategy around. So now, obviously, if the strategy doesn't work, then, it doesn't move forward, then we have to create a new strategy around the property. But, I think everybody wants it. It's just sort of the confusion of like, how do you execute a strategy and what is our rules? But we also have in our policy, the law says that we have to sell at market rate unless it's one of our, it's homeowner, affordable housing, side lot, or there's another one that says any other like special ideas that we have. So Habitat is a special relationship we have and we operate differently from them. I think it would be good to know that that's the way we act. It's one of those 4 exemptions that are allowed. And not the market rate.
Send that home with the attorney.
Yeah.
Just based on what you said, I mean, you're also.
Mhm. And then the policy or how we go about taking applications from people can be different if it falls into different categories too, as opposed to a policy across the board of application. This, including this, contract and different things. There should be a different policy for the different ways we go about a sale.
So we can do all of that in the disposition policy.
Mhm.
Disposition policy and talk about, like, even at the city, we opted to do a side lot program where the application would be smaller than a traditional application of, all those things, but, our current contract, our current application, I should say, I think is to be fair, right, with the mission of the land bank, not only on the local level, but on a bigger, is to increase home affordability, right? And access to home ownership to municipalities and people within the municipality. I think that making sure people understand through that application process that yes, there is a clawback, right? If you do not, we can certainly take that property back, right? There's also the understanding that they actually know what they're getting into, right? And we've had this conversation before, like, if the house needs $70,000 in repairs, if they apply for $10,000 in repairs, we probably think they're not gonna understand the fact. But I think that 30-something page application, I think is good because it actually gets people to stop and think about the process, rather than just buying stuff off the cuff and holding it. That's speculators is what we have to try to, it kind of shuffles out speculators. People are.
Yeah, just touching on that, you're talking about the enforcement mechanism that we attach to it. We have like a 10 or 12 page application that we have a bunch of documents to enforce. But we only enforce when people are doing development. So for instance, 54, I think it was Fifth Ave or 11 Winnie, they were homeowners that were living in the place. So they don't actually have to do any renovations, or at 791, I assume they're not doing renovations. So do you add on like a schedule of like finishes to a place that's already finished?
No, so that's the beauty of not applicable or
Yeah.
intentionally deleted, right? In a contract, right? You can actually say, paragraph, whatever, blah, 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 intentionally deleted, right? Because it's not applicable in that situation. But having a standardized contract, I think, or a standardized application, and then there's the contract, right? So application, and then if you're gonna own this property and live in this property, skip to question 6, you know what I mean, or whatever that might be. But again, it's still the piece of when you do sell unfinished property,
Yeah.
we want to make sure people don't come back to us and sue us if something bad happens, right?
Yeah,
They take it as is.
So I think there's probably like maybe 4 different types of contracts that we would put out. And currently, the one that we have in our 39 page application is for a side lot. So we should also adjust that where we have, depending on what people are buying, we would provide them with the land bank's contract, whether it's a side lot, whether it's a house that needs to be rehabbed for affordable housing, affordable rents, or owner occupied, or vacant lot for Habitat to develop a bunch of houses. There's going to be 4 or 5 different contracts that we would use, but probably similar after we establish the 4 or 5.
So I'm I think from original to now, right, from start to now, it just seems like there's been a lot of empowerment of contractors, and we might not necessarily have all the documents, or at least the templates that you should have. Does that make sense? So maybe it's a matter of going through, cleaning them up, make sure they're current to current law, right? I think, some of the policies we're sitting on are from 2014, 2017, just let's make sure that everything is, usually we'll do that at our annual meeting next year. but then I think it's a good spot for us to have a Google Drive that you guys have access to, and as well as the attorney has stuff, whoever that ends up being, that, these are your templates, right?
Mhm.
And that you have access to them rather than relying on a contractor to pull all that information together.
Mhm.
Again, it's about empowering the executive director to do the work that they're supposed to.
That the board
And I'm
wants
not
to
saying
do.
it's bad that we had that, it's just
Yeah,
that's how we had to function for a little bit of time. And I get that, and I understand the resolution from 23, the wording of, I get that, because that's how we had to operate at that point in time when you were down with full board members, right? Or however many board members you had. So I think that that's part of that process, is now we need to get out of that process.
Mhm.
That functionality.
So tomorrow we will make a recommendation to the board for roofing RFP. And we will also make a recommendation to the board about the attorney RFP. I would like to vote on both, get them passed, and you can get the RFP out for the attorney, and so we can,
and 3 roofing contracts.
3.
So I provided only one for 785. I put it in red in this one. So move it to 17 Park and 32 Glen.
Okay.
We don't have 3 independent, we'll have to do 3 independent votes, 3 independent RFPs.
Okay.
Or execute 3
Three
resolutions. Yes.
Okay, is there anything else?
Make sure you vote.
Mhm.
Motion to adjourn,
Second.
passed,
All in favor?
all in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Great. Thanks, Lee.